All right, everybody, here we are for week 21. For now, showing with Mike and Wayne. I'm Mike, and the other one is Wayne.
Hi!
And we are going to talk action movies, just straight up action flicks this week. We haven't really talked about it. We've talked about some, with other topics and some of the actors that have died over the years and stuff, but we never had a full-on episode about action films, so we're going to do that right now. And Wayne?
I got to tell you, man, this was difficult, just for the wide variety of action films that you could choose from. I struggled with my three choices because there are just so many good ones.
There are a lot to choose from. We'll do some honorable mentions. I really didn't write them down, but I feel like I don't need to. I feel like the ones that we don't talk about will probably be pretty obvious. Some will have left off for other shows that we'll talk about later. But Wayne, go ahead and get us started this week.
All right. I am going with one of my favorite action films, one of the most surprising ones that I've ever seen, went in with zero expectations whatsoever, and that is the 2014 Kingsman: The Secret Service. Now, if you have not seen this movie, you don't know what you're missing. It's just fantastic with the comedy and the action and the unexpected surprises here and there, and one of the greatest cameo small roles, in my opinion, ever, which is Mark Hamill. Luke Skywalker is in this movie and just is a fantastic job. No force, no ties to lightsabers or Star Wars or anything like that. But Mark Hamill, love the guy, so of course I'm gonna choose a movie with him in it.
So Wayne, we talked about this one a little bit before. Why don't you tell me? I got a specific question. What do you think of the scene in the church?
All right, the church scene, utterly fantastic. The plan has been hatched by the evil Valentine, where all of the smartphone SIM card chips have decided to activate and mess with everybody's brain and psyche, putting everybody into a rage, if you will. Colin Firth's character, Harry Hart, also a.k.a. Galahad, is at this church, and he's fighting right alongside with everybody. I mean, it is just a melee brawl. Like, the camera work and the coordination and the stunt people, it was fantastic. And
a lot of close contact fighting, too, which is always interesting when you see that in a movie where there's not a lot of CGI and stuff like that. Just how it's like a dance scene. They got to choreograph it perfectly, otherwise they're going to get it wrong. And that scene to me always sticks out, because also the music they play, too, which I'm drawing a blank on the title of the song, but I know it's a big song. I want to say it's Queen, I think.
Is it Don't Stop Me Now?
See, I don't remember. But, anyway, continue on with your love for Kingsman.
All right. I know we talked about this one before, so I'm not going to go into huge detail. Taron Egerton, Colin Firth, Samuel L. Jackson, Michael Caine. Obviously, my guy, Mark Hamill, has a small role in this. So, Kingsman is a secret service type super soldier society with some of the most well-trained. Would you call them assassins?
Yes, I mean spies, super spies. I would say, yeah. Kind of like James Bond, but with more of a murder streak, I guess. Yeah. More violent.
Yeah. Breaking this movie down. So, think King Arthur and Knights of the Round Table. Each agent or spy has their own, code name. Galahad, Lancelot. I don't know them all, but they all report to Arthur, who is the head guy, Michael Caine, who actually turns out to be a scumbag.
Yes.
Working with Valentine. And I forgot to mention Mark Strong, and I know we've talked about Mark Strong before.
We have, yes.
He plays Merlin, the coordinator, the guy that routes and keeps track of everybody. Just fantastic actor. So breaking this movie down is a little bit difficult, because we're trying to be time sensitive, but at the same time, you want to hit all the talking points. So, Eggsy, Gary Unwin, played by Taron Egerton, is the son of a Kingsman recruit who was killed 15, 20 years beforehand. And he is recruited by Colin Firth because they have an opening on the team. He comes from a less than stellar family background where his mother and I guess stepfather, the male influence in his life, is a corrupt street level crime guy, really abusive. And Eggsy gets mixed up with some of this guy's gang, and he ends up stealing a car. And he's on the run from these guys, whatnot. And because Galahad, he's on the run from these guys. And then Colin Firth's character, Harry Hart, Galahad, is trying to recruit the newest member of the Kingsman. He sees Eggsy's abilities, and just because of his the ties with his father and whatnot, so he recruits him into the Kingsman. He's got to go through this arduous training process using not only his physical abilities but also his mind and mental fortitude, and goes through a variety of tests and training and whatnot against other hand-picked candidates. I've got the status today. They're all trying to compete for this open position, for this prestigious role on this secret team. So Eggsy ends up losing to the they're competing for the role of Lancelot.
Yes,
but it goes to the other's finalist. I forget what her name is. Roxy.
Yes.
So, the diabolical plan has been hatched. We go through and we follow Harry Hart investigating Valentine, played by the always entertaining Samuel L. Jackson. He has one of the most diabolical henchmen that I have ever seen. Her name is Gazelle, played by Sofia Boutella, and she basically has swords for feet. It's a very interesting dynamic, very scary, very terrifying, deadly.
I mean, so when Kingsman came out, it was that movie that kind of everybody was talking about because it is based on a graphic novel, so it was one of those it's a comic book movie. Oh, but it's a comic book movie for everybody. So a lot of people kind of went to it hard R, lots of violence, lots of comedy. The action sequences in the bar, both in the beginning and towards the end of the movie, are fantastic. The one where Harry kind of introduces himself to Eggsby, or Eggsy, whatever his name is. It's just a kind of crazy movie that, to a certain extent, doesn't feel like it should work as well as it does, but it's one of the best action movies within the last 10 years, and a lot of it has to do with just the craziness of it and the violence, and the performances are fantastic. As you mentioned, Mark Strong, who I always think it's funny because I consider him the British Samuel L. Jackson, and this time you have him and Samuel L. Jackson in a movie together. So that's kind of like having just like the perfect symmetry of film come together there with those two guys. I mean, it's just a great movie. This, we've talked about how the sequel was just okay. It's a decent sequel. It's not great, especially after this first movie. You kind of expect. I did look up the song. It was Freebird. I thought it was Freebird, but I'm like, nah, it's not Freebird. So that's the song in the church scene, and there are a couple different movies that use that song, and that one uses it very well. But yes, Kingsman, fantastic movie. I'm glad you brought it up because I could talk about the Kingsman all the time, and everybody in it, like I said, is fantastic and just a great cast.
I was definitely not doing it justice with my synopsis off the top of my head. So
that's all right. All right, so I'll move on to my first one. This is one. It's also mine are all more recent. This one is from 2014 as well. The years was 2014 as well, right?
Yes.
So 2014, great year for action flicks. John Wick, starring Keanu Reeves, directed by Chad. I don't know if I'm going to say this correctly, but I'm going to try. Stahelski, produced by David Leitch, along with Eva Longoria, which I honestly didn't know that till just now. Keanu Reeves, Michael Nyqvist, Alfie Allen, Adrian Palicki, Bridget Moynihan, who plays his wife only in two video scenes that he has on a phone that he watches. Dean Winters, known as Mayhem, if you watch those commercials. Ian McShane, John Leguizamo, and Willem Dafoe. So big cast in this one. It's a trilogy at the moment. They're making at least 2 more, I believe. And this first one, when it came out, man, it just hit. It hit hard. People fell in love with it right away. I didn't get to see it till it came out on home video. And I was disappointed that I had to wait so long to watch it, because once I finally saw it, it was just, from start to finish, it's fantastic. So it starts out, most people probably know the story at this point, but I'll give a little generic synopsis. John Wick's kind of at home, mourning the loss of his wife, who got him a puppy before she died. So he's kind of looking after that dog, enjoying retirement from being a hitman. And he's getting gas at the gas station. And a thug, played by Alfie Allen, who is the son of a Russian mobster, wants his car and basically sets out in motion a plan to steal his car. And they do so. They knock him unconscious, and they kill the dog, and they steal the car. And so that sets into motion this path of revenge that John Wick, our lead character, goes on. And he just kind of wreaks havoc through the entire movie. They send a bunch of guys to his house. The Russian mobster is terrified that his son stole something from John Wick, Baba Yaga, the boogeyman, as they call him. And because John Leguizamo tells him of such, and that's why he hit his son, because no one hits the mobster son except for that reason. And so they try to off him. He obviously kills those people, and then have one of the greatest scenes that you could ever have in an action movie. Because a lot of times when you watch action movies, it's like, oh, look at all those guns, and they use like 5 of them. Deadpool has a huge joke because they ran out of money because they only have a certain amount. They couldn't show all the guns. So like in John Wick, he breaks a hole into the ground of his house and pulls out a whole crate of weapons, which he then uses the majority of those weapons throughout this entire film to get his vengeance, let them know that he's back, that they woke a sleeping giant, essentially. He was enjoying retirement, being on his own, and this carnage just erupts. And some of the...
I have to say I'm back.
Yes, exactly. One of the greatest lines from the trailer. But the whole, it's just this type of movie, what's cool about it is not only it's the cinematography, because the fast cuts, the shooting, and how they have to kind of keep up with all the fast motions and stuff, but the stunt choreography, it's fantastic in this movie. The gunplay, Chad Stahelski and David Leitch, I believe they were stuntmen. I think Stahelski was actually Keanu Reeves' stuntman for the Matrix movies and stuff. So they had worked together. So you kind of know that he has an understanding for that type of work in those action movies. And what happens after the beginning of the movie, it sets up one of the greatest action flicks that we've had probably in the last 20 years. Just pure action. The story is relatively simple. I always kind of think it's fun because I think of Major League 2 when Omar Epps' character is talking, he's in that trashy action movie, and it's because they killed his boa constrictor. I kind of get that same feeling from they killed his dog. Obviously, in this movie, there's a much more emotional attachment to the dog because it was a gift, the last gift he received from his wife who died of cancer. So there's more of obviously a touch on that. And who doesn't love someone getting revenge on a dead dog? I mean, that's kind of you hit a nerve with everybody when that dog dies, and it just sets just this rampage of death, and particularly when he goes into the Russian bathhouse, and how he gets in there is funny too, because you got Kevin Nash. Yes. Playing a big bodyguard, and he's like, hey, I'm getting in there. He's like, all right, I'm going to go take a break. He goes around the corner and he just lets him in because he doesn't want to die, which is very smart. Because then John Wick kills everybody basically in the Russian bathhouse.
Yeah, the kill counts and just the ease with which he eliminates his targets. And headshots. That's what you always, when you watch horror movies as much as I do, you're always shoot him in the head. John Wick must watch all those horror movies because he shoots everybody in the head and they don't get up again. And that's just kind of how you're supposed to do it. But yeah, so I mean, it started this great franchise in my opinion, and and I get where it's going now. Not everybody's a fan of it, and that's fine. But this first one on its own is just a killer action flick. Something like The Matrix, and people don't like that franchise. They take the first Matrix movie is just as good as this first John Wick movie, in my opinion. I think they kind of sit next to each other as Keanu Reeves' 2 best action flicks that he's ever done, disregarding all the sequels and stuff. But yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen this movie, you've kind of been living under a rock, I guess. It's been 6 years.
since the first one. The third one just came out a couple years ago. So it's a fantastic movie. I definitely recommend you checking it out. Wayne, let's go to your number 2.
All right, I am going back to 2003. We are going with Bad Boys 2, Will Smith, Martin Lawrence, Gabriel Union, Jordi Mola, Peter Stormare, Michael Shannon, Joey Pantoliano.
Henry Rollins?
Yes. So, if you're not familiar, 2 loose cannon narcotic cops investigate the flow of ecstasy into Florida from the Cuban drug cartel. So, Officer Mike Lowry and Marcus Bennett are on the tail of drug lord Johnny Tapia and are determined to bring the man to justice. Additional drama is provided and friction with the DEA, which counts Marcus's younger sister Sydney among its agents, and from Marcus's possibility of transferring from the department, leaving Mike without his longtime partner. Also throwing in there that Mike is also having a relationship with Sydney that Marcus finds out about and is not too happy about because he is not a fan of Officer Mike's playboy lifestyle. Okay, so where to begin with this? Obviously the action, nonstop.
Start to finish.
The one-liners, when the car chase in the beginning, these MFs are throwing cars. We'll throw them back. The opening scene where they raid the Klan rally.
So good. Such a good scene, yeah. That's where we meet Michael Shannon's character. He's their informant. Yeah, he's really funny.
One of the greatest one-liners. You have violated my rights.
They're throwing him. Yeah, as they're
into custody, not hostage. Excuse me.
Yes.
I left him in the trunk of the car for a couple of days. It's cool, whatever.
As I say, as they're throwing him in the trunk, he's saying that. Yeah, it's too funny, but
the on-screen chemistry that Martin Lawrence and Will Smith have in this movie is fantastic. It builds off of the first one. Obviously, Bad Boys 2 is the sequel to Bad Boys. Let me get you the... Let's see. 1995, so the first movie came out then, 1995. Bad Boys 2 comes out 8 years later in 2003. This year, Bad Boys for Life, the third and final, I believe final.
Not anymore. Nope, they're making another one.
They are making another
one. Because it did so well. Yeah, because it did really well. That's why.
17 years later, we get the third installment, and we're getting a fourth.
Yep.
I am going to go, controversial at times. The scene where Marcus's oldest daughter is going out on her first date, and he and Mike kind of
yes
reunite or relink up to kind of mess with the young man. Obviously, the language, it's an R-rated movie for a reason.
Yes.
It's utterly hilarious.
Not very PC either, so if you haven't seen it, don't be too offended by it. It's just
yeah, that's another thing too. 17 years ago, humor was different and whatnot, but hey, just remember it's all it's supposed to be lighthearted and a joke. So.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Now go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, just breaking it down. They're chasing leads all over Miami. At one point, I believe they do end up recruiting a team after Sydney is kidnapped on a undercover mission.
Yes.
And they recruit some guys to go into Cuba to get her back. And the action reaches a fever pitch or frenzy point, whatever funky analogy you want to use there. But yeah, they're basically driving through a town in Cuba. Yeah, through.
Yes.
Not around. Through the town in a Hummer.
In a Hummer. Yeah, it's a Hummer. Yeah.
They're getting chased by tanks and there's anti-aircraft and basically the army is chasing them.
Now, I do want to point out too, because one of the big criticisms of this movie is that they're just kind of going through some shanty town. But I watched it recently. It's probably been like 5 years, but the last time I watched it, I'm pretty sure that town they're going down in is where they're making all their drugs. Because as they run through those towns, you see a bunch of white powder through those houses, like a bunch of white powder just sparks up in the air. So I think that was the intention, and not like that they were ruining these people's like livelihood, because some people took issue with that.
Oh no, I agree with you. I think they were shutting down the drug operation.
Yeah, and it was just one of those things.
Maybe on purpose, but hey,
yeah, exactly right. It just kind of happened that way. I do also want to point out, I think it's interesting you chose this one, because while I would argue that the first and the third one are better, I do think this is the better action movie of the three, and it's just so balls to the walls. It's Michael Bay at his most Michael Bayist, like when he was still okay, and he just kind of went for it. He added, it's like a half hour longer. It's a long movie. It feels like it ends like 3 times. The scene at the house where they're pretending to be the rat exterminators is hilarious as well. That's one of my favorite scenes in that movie. And it's just a...
Daddy had a straight pile driving the mama rat.
It's just a...
Where Marcus ingests the ecstasy.
Yes. Oh, yes. And this is the first time, too, we get the woosah, which has become kind of ingrained in our culture, at least for people our age. It's always when someone gets a little too out of, you're like, woosah, and that's from this movie, so if people didn't know that, that's where it comes from. Martin Lawrence's character. And, it's just, these two have great chemistry together. So, we'll get into the third one probably in a different podcast, but I want to say that it was great to have them back again on screen. And I really enjoyed the hell out of that movie as much as I did this movie. And this one is just, like I said, this one's so crazy when they're chasing the morgue van and they're throwing the dead bodies out just Joey Pants like, there's a dead body over here, there's a dead body over here. Like, to be fair, Cap, they were already dead. I didn't do that one. They're so fun. It's such a fun franchise. And that one, it's like, that one kind of Fast and Furious before the Fast and Furious movies decided to take it worldwide. Bad Boys 2 did it first. And it was like, hey, let's have him go to Cuba for no other reason than just because. And like, that's it.
Good analogy, yeah. The later Fast and Furious movies, 4 on. Good call on that one.
Yeah.
2003, Bad Boys 2. While you're definitely correct that it may not be the best in the series, definitely as far as action goes, why I chose it.
Yeah, it's the craziest one out of the 3 of them, that's for sure. Okay, so for my second one, I'm going to go with probably a little lesser known. It's an Indonesian film, a Netflix original from 2018 called The Night Comes For Us. It's directed by Timo Tjahjanto, who I've become a huge fan of over the last couple years with his movies. This one specifically. And this movie is crazy. If you've heard of The Raid, it stars basically like 3 or 4 actors from The Raid. The Raid is just a crazy ass action film and could also be talked about in this conversation. But I chose this one because this is the lesser known one. And Timo did not direct The Raid. That was Gareth Evans. But Timo got his chance to do his action movie. It kind of plays out like a video game, which is pretty cool because it's like a boss level type thing. So he kind of, the main guy is a hitman and he is tired of killing like women and children. And just can't do it anymore, like it's part of the job. Like he doesn't want to do that part of the job. He doesn't mind killing people, but he doesn't want to, women and children or something he doesn't want to do anymore. And but when they're witnesses, that's the bad guys want you to take care of everybody. And so he turns on his people, and he ends up pissing everybody off. And so they basically send a group of assassins to kill him. And then he teams up with his two of his best friends. One of them. He's got 3 best friends. One is the main kind of bad guy, and then the other 2 are like his buddies. They were all like cops or soldiers together or something like. There's something along like they were all together at some point, and they went their separate ways. And what happens is it's just this. Like I said, it's like a video game. So he's kind of like just climbing the ladder until he ends up facing off against his buddy, who's the main star of The Raid. And it's kick-ass action. Lots of like karate and stuff like that. Super violent, super gory. Because this Timo, the director, is a huge horror fan, and he's done a couple horror movies, also for Netflix, one for Shudder as well. And he's very gory. He knows how to direct gore and violence and action. And this movie is just, it kicks ass. And it's one of those movies, I think, if people love action movies, they need to go to Netflix right now, watch The Night Comes for Us. It's just this crazy, not even really a revenge movie, because they want revenge on him for turning on them. So it's more just him defending himself, and it's just nuts. And I really recommend anybody to watch it. It does have subtitles, so you do have to put up with that. But that shouldn't stop you, because, movies are international. I wanted to watch it again before we did the show. I didn't get a chance to. It's so good. I really, 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 really want people to go watch it. It's a good companion piece if you do watch The Raid or The Raid 2, which I have yet to watch The Raid 2, but the first one's fantastic. And this one is just a kick-ass. Again, I say kick-ass like 5 times. That's how good this movie is, and I really want people to watch it.
Well, there are so many just amazing, foreign films that are coming out.
Yes.
Parasite.
Train to Busan, which we talked about.
That we talked about earlier. Yep. And, a lot of times people aren't going to give these opportunities because they have to read the subtitles.
Exactly. And there is some English in this movie, too. So it does kind of go back and forth.
When these movies are so good, you don't even need to understand what they're saying. You get what's going on. You get the dialogue just by the way. It's so well acted and so well shot and so well choreographed. It's nice to see exactly what they're saying, but it's not needed.
It's not always needed. A lot of the... in these foreign films, a lot of the story is through the characters and through their actions. So you can kind of get it without seeing everything that they say all the time. Obviously, it's nice to know what they're saying, like you said, but it's just a killer movie. It's about 2 hours of your time. It's straight up action from beginning to end, and I really think people should go to It's on Netflix. If you have Netflix, check it out. The Night Comes for Us. Go watch it right now. Well, after you listen to this episode, then go watch it.
Yes.
All right, Wayne, what's your final?
All right, I am going back to 1997 for this one. This is peak Nicolas Cage awesomeness. I am going with Conair. And in choosing my Nicolas Cage action movies in the mid-90s, I had quite a few to choose from.
Yes.
The only reason I did not choose The Rock is because we talked about it a little bit last week with the passing of the late, great...
Sean Connery, yep.
Connery, of course. I mean, you've also got Face Off, where he and Travolta just duke it out throughout the whole movie. You got Gone in 60 Seconds. That's actually, I think, 2000, so not technically in his 90s era, but it's probably the last real...
It was kind of, it was definitely towards the end of his really good action flicks.
Getting into the National Treasure movies, which are great. I love them, but...
More adventure than action.
I want to talk about Conair, because Conair is fantastic in so many ways. I mean, let's talk about the cast really quick. You've got Cameron Poe, played by Nicolas Cage, the Special Forces soldier that is convicted of
manslaughter. Yeah.
For defending his pregnant wife at a bar that she works at. Personally, don't know how that would ever hold up in any court where you're going to get a decorated hero soldier convicted.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know. Maybe in Trump's America, but really, I don't know. Thankfully, that's over, so who cares? All right, we got John Cusack, who really plays a minor role, or a minor part in this. He plays Agent Vince Larkin, but really he's great in it. But he's overshadowed by John Malkovich, Cyrus the Damn Virus Grissom. I don't know. He's one of my favorite villains of all time. Just menacing and frightening and calculating.
Yes, very calculated.
Reaction for everything. Like, he's planned for... So basically, Conair, Convict Air, a bunch of the most dangerous dirtbag criminals, violent serial killers, they're all being transported to another prison. Cameron Poe has been released or paroled. He's just catching a flight home. But the convicts take over the plane, and the sheriffs, the people, in charge of protecting the plane, I don't know what their exact title is. They're taken hostage. There is a female who is in peril for more than just her life.
By Danny Trejo playing the great Johnny 23.
A serial rapist who wants to get 24.
Yes.
And he is just equally creepy.
Yes. He's despised by everybody.
One of the lines that he uses is, "If they knew the truth, they'd call me Johnny 300." Which, if you stop and think about that, just makes your flesh crawl and
yes.
whatnot. But obviously, Cameron Poe is not having any of that and delivers one of his best beatdowns of the whole movie, where he kicks the crap out of him and says, "You don't treat women like lions," as he's just absolute shit. Just fantastic. He ends up handcuffing Johnny 23 to a railing or something, and as the plane crashes, they take away the body, and the arm is still hanging there.
Somehow the arms rip off, yes.
But yeah, let's see. Dave Chappelle, Pinball Parker.
Yep.
Ving Rhames, Nathan, Diamond Dog.
That's one of my obviously Cyrus the Virus is great, but I love Diamond Dog, and one of my favorite lines is, I won't repeat the first part of it because it has a word I shouldn't use in it. But the last part of it is, "When I get on the ground, the day of the dog begins." And that's like my favorite line from that movie.
Yes. MC Gainey is Swamp Thing.
He's great too. MC Gainey is, yeah, he's great in a lot of things. Yeah, great character actor.
Cameron Poe befriends another inmate.
Bubba. Call him Bubba Gump.
McKelty Williamson.
Michael T. Williamson, yeah. That's how you say it.
Sorry.
That's okay. I know, it looks weird.
Yeah. But Baby O is diabetic, and he needs his insulin, and they don't give him his shot when they're supposed to. They say he'll get it on the plane. Well, convicts take over the plane, and he can't. So he starts going into diabetic shock, and Cameron Poe can't leave his buddy because, he's a soldier, no man left behind. And so he's got to try and find, I believe they break the needles, but they keep the insulin, so he's got to find a syringe. So
yes.
While the plane is landed and they're making the transfer over, Poe slips away to try and find a syringe, and he encounters an airport custodian. He's like, I need a needle, and he gives this whole spiel about, "Oh, son, drugs at the end," and just
yeah.
Just the way that whole scene plays out. But he gets the syringe, and he gets Baby O his his diabetic medication. Just these little subplots that explain the character of the character.
Yes,
or
yes.
The moral upstandingness, because he's been in jail for 6 or 7 years. So you think, convict life, but no, he remains steadfast, the hero, wrongfully convicted. So they take to the streets. And they end up crash landing in the Vegas Strip. I don't want to go into too much detail. If you haven't seen this movie, you've got to. It's one of the greatest action flicks of not just the 90s, but of all time in my opinion.
Yes, it's a quintessential 90s action flick. Everybody should see it if they like 90s action movies. It does everything you want 90s action movies to do. It also has a great character role for Steve Buscemi as the serial killer who wore a woman's face through 3 different states while he drove a convertible or something like that. And he's just great. He delivers some great lines, and when they're dancing to, I think they're dancing to Freebird
Sweet
as
Home
well.
Alabama.
Or no, Sweet Home Alabama. That's right, Sweet Home Alabama. Yeah, define irony. A bunch of prisoners dancing to a song on a plane made famous by a band that died in a plane crash. That's always one of those great lines people like to bring up, and it was just, it came out at the right time, I think. It was that type of movie that everybody kind of fell in love with it. And Nicolas Cage's hair, which is funny because that's one of the things he says whenever he steps into a new role, no matter what the character is, he wants to come up with his own hairstyle for that character. And the fact that he came up with the one for this one is just fantastic. It's what anybody ever talks about. Terrible Southern accent. Can't really do accents. Probably shouldn't do them. But
that skullet that he's got going on is fantastic.
The hair. Well, and if he didn't do this accent, I don't think this movie would have stuck around in the lexicon of America and American pop culture, because it really, put the bunny back in the box. It's those lines that people remember, and it's not, if it was put the bunny back in the box, it's not as memorable, And
why couldn't you just put the bunny back in the box?
Yes. It's just a great, fun action flick. Malkovich really makes that movie his own. I think that's what really works with it, is his ability to just kind of take it over. Like, he went for it. It was a silly movie with a silly idea, and he went for it, and he succeeded, and he makes that movie kind of what it is, as well as, you know, John Cusack and Nicolas Cage and stuff. It was kind of Cusack's first foray into, like, big budget action flicks, and kind of led to him doing, I think, a lot more after that. But it was funny because, yeah, you're right. Like, he's the other main character, really, but you don't really, because he's away from the criminals the whole movie, he doesn't really feel a part of it until the very end when he jumps on the motorcycle. And they take down the fire truck. And then Malkovich with a great scene where the frickin' throws him onto the rock crusher, which why the rock crusher is still going on at like midnight, I have no idea, but it is. And it's a great end to that character, and the whole movie just comes to a giant explosion, basically.
When John Cusack's character steals the agent's
the car,
Corvette,
and
ends up getting towed by the plane and crashes into the flight tower.
Yes. Oh yeah. Is that my car? Yeah. And then the license plate falls. Yeah. It was pretty fantastic. There were a lot of great jokes in that movie, a lot of great action sequences, just a lot of fun. You could tell everybody had a lot of fun doing that movie.
Yep. Here's a question. I mentioned a couple of Nicolas Cage-focused action films. Do you have any other honorable mentions you want to talk about before you give us your last pick?
So I would, to stick with Cage for one, Face Off. I always loved that movie. But like you said, The Rock is definitely up there. The Raid, as I mentioned before already. The Die Hard movies, the Lethal Weapon movies, The Matrix, the first one especially, fantastic action flick. We talked about in our video game episode, we talked about Dredd, which I think is a great movie, and it's very similar to The Raid. Trying to think.
I've got one I want to ask you about. How about 1994's Speed? Keanu Reeves.
Oh, I love Speed. Speed is fantastic. Another one that's just like shouldn't work, but because of all the performances and the pacing and the cinematography and just the way it looks, the way it sounds, the cast is fantastic. Sandra Bullock is awesome. Keanu Reeves is Keanu Reeves, but like
cans. It was filled with cans.
It's just such a fun movie. That's another good one. The Fast and Furious franchise, you know, we touched loosely on that a little bit. That's another, you know, there are a couple of ones I could choose from there that were great. The Rundown is always one of my favorite action flicks with The Rock. Walking Tall, another one with him. Point Break, love that movie. That may be more of a cop movie, but that's a great action flick too.
I think in the future we're going to have to pick a month and just do action movies by the decade.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a good idea.
To happen in 2021.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I mean, there's so many obviously great ones to choose from. I'm sure we're missing some, and the people are gonna be like, "Oh, why didn't you talk about this movie?" There's just so many. But my final pick is going to be what I consider to be one of the two greatest action flicks of all time. Meaning that there's only one other movie I think is just as perfect in this movie, and the other movie I'll mention first is Die Hard. Now, we're not going to talk about Die Hard in this episode. We're going to save that for sometime in December.
The Christmas special.
Exactly. Sometime in December, we'll talk about Die Hard and its validity of being a Christmas movie, all that. But the other movie I consider to be just as perfect as Die Hard, and it has somewhat become controversial for some reason or another, Mad Max Fury Road. Now, this movie came out around my birthday weekend in 2015, so I was pumped. Every year for my birthday, with the exception of this year, I go to the movies. And most of the time it's by myself. This time I went with my dad, who inexplicably fell asleep halfway through the flippin' movie, which I don't understand, because it's all that he likes. He loves action movies that never stop, and that's all it is from start to finish. So this movie, we meet Max, now played by Tom Hardy, originally played by Mel Gibson, kills like a iguana or whatever, and then he gets like kidnapped, and so then we're introduced to Furiosa, played by the great Charlize Theron.
It really is her movie.
It really is. That's why I think people have a problem with it, because Max kind of takes a back seat in this one. While I would argue he's still the main character and he's still very relevant in this movie. definitely Charlize Theron, I think too, because of her ability, really kind of takes control of a lot of her scenes. So it starts out that she's got this caravan, if you will, of women that she's protecting from the bad guy, Immortan Joe. So let me go through the cast real quick. We already mentioned Hardy and Theron. Nicholas Hoult, Hughes Keys Byrne, who was the original villain in the Mad Max movie, the first one, and returned to play Immortan Joe in this one. Rosie Huntington Whiteley, who is the pregnant one. Riley Keough, Zoe Kravitz, Abby Lee Cordy are the rest of the women. This movie... So
they're his harem, right?
Yes, yeah, they're like the women that he gets pregnant and.
I don't want to use the slave term or whatnot.
No, but yeah, essentially that's what they are, and it's just this crazy story. I mean, it shows you like their whole little like village that's built on the side of a mountain, essentially. It's got these crazy things like how they get their water, how they get their milk, which is like from women sitting in a room being milked all day. It's really weird and bizarre. That definitely threw a lot of people off too, I think, because it was so strange. I think it's just because George Miller couldn't get as strange in the 80s because he didn't have a big budget. This movie had a huge budget. And what was helped by it too, I think, in my opinion, why to me it's the perfect action flick and one of the only like 2 perfect action flicks made in the history of action flicks, is because he did practical effects. In 2015, to do basically all practical effects, with the exception he had to do the sandstorm, because obviously you can't predict when a sandstorm is necessarily going to come by for you to film it. So you had to digitally put the sandstorm in, but everything else they did. They had stunt drivers, they had people hanging off stuff, people jumping and fighting, and it was just a crazy balls to the walls action flick with a female Charlize Theron, basically, like you said, as the lead, and Tom Hardy sitting there basically as like the kind of her backup as later in the movie, I would say, because he's kind of just along for the ride. He tries to leave them behind, but he can't drive the vehicle, so he realizes he needs them. He doesn't talk very much in this movie. But when he does, he gives a really good performance. Tom Hardy is on record as saying that he was a bit confused with this movie when he read the script. So that kind of, I think, comes off in his performance early on. He acts very like, huh? Like lots of grunting. But yeah, I mean, I think to me, it's the sequences. The story always gets criticized, but I think to me, the story is within the characters, and that is missed in a movie that's so... I think a lot of people missed it in a movie that's just so visually stunning and so crazy to look at that you kind of don't get that until you see it a second or third time.
I will admit I am one of those people that got lost in the action and missed the story. I actually did not like this movie the first time I saw it. I'm like, they go out in the middle of the desert and then they turn around and go back. What the F is this?
Yes.
Stupid. Want to quit huffing spray paint and write a better movie. But, I mean, I saw it a second time and I kind of tried to break it down and look at it at different angles. The action and the spray paint on the guys in the mouth when they're driving through the sandstorm.
Yes,
utterly fantastic.
Yes,
I mean, it's got monster trucks. It's got dudes on stilts playing Firebase.
Yep. Yep. It's just insane. It's an insane movie, and I get how it could be misconstrued, I guess, or just like because the plot was. It seemed to be basic, but it really wasn't at the heart of it. I think a lot of it kind of gets oversimplified. And again, if you watch it again and you pay attention to the characters, and this is just my opinion, anyone can feel free to disagree with me. I have no problem with that. It really is a story about you have someone like Furiosa who's trying to get away from this madness, but then doesn't realize that the weakness to the bad guy is his home. So, like, while it's ridiculous that they went all this way and then they have to go all the way back, it comes to that realization, like, they have to, and it takes Max to kind of, like, point it out, well, why don't we just go take it from him? And they're like, well, why didn't we think of that? And it's just kind of...
That was after the Greenland turns out to be not green anymore, right?
After the what?
Aren't they going to like a fertile?
Yes, yeah, they're going to the place where Furiosa was.
I quoted Waterworld.
Yes.
When I meant to.
Yes, they're going to the place that Furiosa was from, which was supposed to be lots of water, lots of land, lots of food, and they get there and it's gone. And it's turned into sand, just like everything else in the area. And so she's like at a loss. She doesn't know what to do. And that's where Max has this idea. Why don't we just go take it from him? Because if you think about it, all the main villain and all the other villains are away from the base. There's no one protecting the home anymore. And that's kind of his idea. He's like, well, shit, let's just go back that way and we'll take it from them because they're not there. And that's exactly what they do.
Because Joe is he's hoarding the water from the people. Right?
Yes. Yes. He makes them.
They die of thirst, basically.
Yeah, he controls them because he gives out like a little tiny bit of water each day. And they're tired of living like that. So then it basically turns into a movie where she's trying to liberate these women because they're like his sex slaves, essentially. And she then ends up liberating an entire village and getting rid of the villain. And that's kind of like her story. And that's why Furiosa at the end is kind of like the hero. And Max just kind of walks off, like letting her have all the glory. And we're left to like, where's he going to go to next, basically? Which I hope they get to at some point. The next one they are doing is a Furiosa sequel, or a prequel. So we'll probably get where she came from and that kind of stuff. And it's going to be Anya Taylor-Joy this time instead of Charlize, because Charlize is obviously a little older now, so she can't really play like 20, 30 years younger anymore. But
Can't means won't.
Huh?
Can't means won't. Try harder.
No, I think she would have loved to do it. I think she was kind of upset that they decided to go that route.
Instead of a sequel?
Yeah, I think
your story on or something.
Yeah, but I think with Miller, I think he kind of figured like her story ends at the end of Fury Road, which it kind of does because she saves the day.
You can't really.
Bad
happens. Well, shit.
You kind of got to force your way into trying to figure out what happens next. Now this one we get to we'll get to lead into it, right? It'll be like how she ended up where she ended up, which I think will be kind of cool. And just for him to get back into that world. But again, I mean, this is a movie. It's funny. I always feel I have to defend this movie. And I know people don't always take awards and stuff seriously. But it made a crap ton of money. Critically, it sits at 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. Let's see. And then, like, it was nominated for, like, a handful of Oscars. And made numerous top 10 lists of 2015. And it like I said, it was nominated for Best Picture. And I'm like, I always feel like when I talk to people, I got to defend this movie. I'm like, I shouldn't have to defend a movie that was that well received and that well liked by a lot of people.
You think this was because people had a problem with the female actress taking the lead over the Mad Max character?
I don't know if it's as much of the fact that she was a female, just that she wasn't Max. I think this one, I don't know if this one suffered from that as much. I'm sure there were some people. Obviously, those people that are upset at Star Wars having a female lead character are going to be upset at this type of movie, probably anyway. I think there were just people that were disappointed that it wasn't more focused on Max because it's called Mad Max. And while I understand that, I think what they gave us was, like I said, one of the best action flicks that was ever made. And that's in my opinion. And I think it's near perfect. So
one of the things that I've heard, now this is originally coming from the Big Bang Theory, where the original Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones is insequential to the story because the Ark would have ended up being opened anyway. Some people have tried to say that Mad Max is insequential to this story because what's going to happen is going to happen anyway, which obviously is not true because isn't it his idea to go back?
It is, yes.
So that invalidates this theory.
It does, yeah. It is his idea to go back, and I think without him, a lot of the things that they're able to get away from don't happen. And he's needed to an extent. He may not be the main focus, but he is needed in this movie. And I think Tom Hardy played it perfectly, honestly. I think, that's why I was really looking forward to another one. And I don't know why George Miller is kind of taking his time. He's getting older. He needs to hurry up here. Because I would love to see another one with Tom Hardy. It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director. It was the first Mad Max franchise to receive Academy Award recognition, and one of the few sequels to be nominated for Best Picture. And it won
6 Oscars, right?
It won 6 Oscars for Best Film Editing, Best Production Design, Best Costume Design, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Sound Editing. So, like, this movie is a beast. It won 6 Oscars. It made a crap ton of money. It's one of the highest rated films on Rotten Tomatoes. Take that for what it is. That just means that the majority of critics liked it. Look at the overall rating to see what they rated it if you want to get a out of 10 rating. Just a fantastic movie. A great movie. If you've seen it and you didn't care for it, I recommend watching it again. Have a more of an open mind to it. It's a lot of fun. Just a killer movie to kind of put on like on a Sunday afternoon and just enjoy the hell out of it.
Yep. Now, this doesn't have any ties to the original Mad Max movies, does it? Other than the character being the same?
I mean, kind of. They don't really allude to much, except the fact that he has these dreams where all these kids died, and that, I believe, is a tie-in to the second one. So it takes place in the same universe. It's just not... They don't show a lot of direct tie-ins to it. He didn't want to focus too much on trying to appease the fan base, I think, which is what a lot of people, when they do sequels years later, they tend to do that. And that, look at Star Wars. The people that didn't like the first Abrams Star Wars was because it was too much like the original Star Wars. Then Last Jedi was too different. Then the third one was more the same. People judged too much, I think, and I think he was just trying to avoid that. He just wanted to make a solid movie that fits into that universe, and like I said, I think he succeeded. I know it is very controversial for some reason, but it really shouldn't be.
No, I hear you.
All right, so we are moving on to our review of the week, and this week I went... I'm trying to stay current, so we went with basically out of all the platforms that we have, the newest movie that had come out, and that is Jingle Jangle, A Christmas Journey.
Calling it right now, if this doesn't become an instant classic that's watched for years to come, something is wrong with people, because this was an amazing magical journey. Absolutely 100% love this. I probably loved this as equal to Last Christmas that we reviewed a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Wow, a couple months ago. Yeah, that's funny.
I know, right? It's weird to say that, but yeah, it was probably a couple months ago.
I enjoyed that one, but this has a magic to it that, I mean, it ranks up there with just the classics, like,
Elf, Home Alone, Die Hard.
Die Hard. I was trying to think of some really touching,
touching ones. I know what you're saying. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
4th Street and It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah,
but it's different in its own range community.
It is. Well, let me start with some stats here. Directed by David E. Talbert, starring Forrest Whitaker, Keegan-Michael Key, Hugh Bonneville, Anika Noni Rose, Madeline Mills, who plays the young.
Absolutely adorable. I cannot wait to see what her.
Yeah, she plays Journey. Felicia Rashad and Ricky Martin as the Matador toy, which I didn't know who.
Really good too.
Yeah, I didn't know who it was until the end. So, Jingle Jangle: A Christmas Journey starts off with a young Forrest Whitaker who plays Jeronicus Jangle. It's not obviously Forrest Whitaker; it's Justin Cornwell, and he's a toy maker, and he has an apprentice named Gustus Finn, who is played, the older version is Keegan-Michael Key, the younger version is Miles Barrow. And Gustafson takes, one night after he cracks the code, Jangle does, and he's going to be rich and he's going to bring joy to everybody. It's not really about the money, it's about making kids excited and happy. And he gets, Gustafson steals the Matador toy. Don Juan Diego, which Jeronicus was going to make into this big Christmas toy. That gets stolen with all of his other ideas by Gustafson, who then goes out and becomes this huge toy maker, the biggest toy maker in the land, and makes all these great Christmas toys that everybody loves, all based on Jeronicus's ideas. And we're then, fast forward years later, we get Forrest Whitaker, who's the older Jeronicus, depressed, sad. The wife has died in a kind of a flash forward. Like, she died. They do these really cool stop motion animation interludes, and that's how it's interesting
with the marionettes.
Yes, with the marionettes, to do the death that way because it's a kids movie. So while you want kids to know what death is and how it is, it kind of lessens the impact in the movie of losing a main character. And I thought that was a good idea because the whole point of this movie is joy. It's not like to be sad or anything. The whole idea this was made was
believe in the magic of Christmas.
Yes, exactly. That's why I kind of related to Elf, because while Elf is goofy, the whole point of Elf is that people stop believing in Christmas. And this movie is very similar. Like, you have to, the robot, Buddy 3000, you have to believe in Buddy for Buddy to work. And I really like that kind of stuff. When this movie started, I was pretty sure it was a musical, but I wasn't 100% because I kind of watched the trailer. So right away, I'm like, I don't like musicals. Everyone knows it about
your
me.
love for musicals, sir.
But I will say, by the end of this movie, I feel pretty much how you feel, Wayne. It was kind of a joyful, emotional journey with these characters. Everybody was fantastic. The songs were really good, actually. I really liked Keegan-Michael Key's intro song. I thought that was really good. The beats were rocking, like they had, some really good beats and music just behind the lyrics. And I wasn't sure if Forrest Whitaker was going to sing them, but can he sing? I don't know. And then we're about halfway through the movie, he has his first song, and it's pretty good. He does a good job. But
there's an article that he hasn't sang professionally like that in almost 40 years. So.
It's crazy. He still got it.
I cannot wait to sit down and watch this with the family.
You know,
it's going to be in my rotation of holiday movies. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Home Alone. Jingle Jangle, Christmas Story. It's going to be in there. Muppet Christmas Carol. There you go.
That's another, I would definitely compare it to the Christmas Carol type stories as well, as Jangle kind of becomes the Scrooge because of what has happened to him, his wife dying, his life's work being stolen from him.
He loses his magic.
He loses his magic. He pushes his daughter away. She goes and lives on her own and raises her own daughter, which is Journey. Journey is like her grandfather, and I think they play that really well. She's just a great character. The little girl was great. I know my wife was like, why are we watching this one? I'm like, well, it's a new movie. It's a Christmas movie. She doesn't really like all those all the time, but even at the end of the movie, she's like, wow, she was really good. And I'm like, yeah, she was. Like, she did a really good job. It's fun.
There's a nice little twist at the end that we're not going to spoil for you because you need to watch this movie.
Exactly. You need to watch it. It's a lot of fun. It definitely comes right in time for Christmas, which obviously was Netflix's plan. It is a Netflix original. You definitely, I think, should watch it if you like Christmas movies, like the ones we've already talked about.
Or if you just like musicals. This rocks.
No, it's a lot of fun. Like I said, I didn't expect to like it as much. I wasn't sure how it was going to be when I picked it for us to review. It just happened to be the new movie this week, and I think people are going to watch it, and I think people are going to enjoy it. I think you're right, when I think people are going to add it into their Christmas movie watch list, which is nice because Christmas is just around the corner. So, but yeah, so if you're interested in this movie, definitely go to Netflix and check it out, because we both, obviously, as you can tell, think it is very good. And Forrest Whitaker, holds this movie together and sings his butt off as well as everybody else does. I didn't even know Keegan-Michael Key could sing as well, and he did a really good job too, and I liked him as the villain, if you will. Yeah, so no, good, definitely a good, solid family flick. It's for everybody. We don't always review movies that are for everybody. This definitely fits into that category, and I think you should go check it out. All right, so we are going to move on to Gone But Not Forgotten. This week, we're going to touch on someone who we just lost. He's not necessarily known in the movie business, but he's known in the entertainment business. We'll talk about, let's see, we also lost Ken Spears, who's the other creator of Scooby-Doo. Jack Ruby died a few months back. But the other person we lost this week was Alex Trebek at the age of 80. And we're going to talk about him, which the impact that he had on the culture of America, a Canadian himself, not even American, is huge. He started that show as the host. Let me see here. Syndicated TV show for 37 seasons, from its revival in 1984 until his death in 2020. So from 1984 to 2020, he's been the host of Jeopardy, and he will be, his last episode airs on Christmas, which I think will be a fitting and touching kind of tribute to him.
Absolutely. So obviously, Jeopardy and Alex Trebek was featured in White Men Can't Jump. I believe that was 89.
Yes, 80. Early 90s. I want to say early 90s.
90, 91?
Yeah.
Yeah. He is obviously featured in that movie as the lead actress.
Yes.
Her dream is to win on Jeopardy, and she does pretty good if I remember correctly.
Yes, she does. Yes, she does. Very good. He obviously everybody also knows Will Ferrell portrayed him on SNL, as well as Daryl Hammond portrayed Sean Connery. So the fact that we lost them like 8 days apart from each other was kind of crazy to people in our generation, because even though we don't know if Alex Trebek and Sean Connery knew each other in real life, it's as if they did because of SNL. And they recently this week there was a clip that showed was one episode that Alex Trebek himself actually showed up on SNL, and kind of had that back and forth with Connery. And there was of course a two Alex Trebek joke thing that they did, really funny. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean he was in Cheers as himself, Rain Man, Golden Girls, White Men Can't Jump, as Wayne talked about, Shortcuts. Groundhog Day, The Larry Sanders Show, Rugrats, The Nanny, Beverly Hills 90210, Blossom, Jury Duty with Pauly Shore. I mean, you've made it when you're in Jury Duty with Pauly Shore, I think that was like... Yes. Whizzing the juice. X-Files. A Man in Black who Agent Mulder thought looked incredibly like himself. Let's see, Seinfeld, The Magic School Bus. So just shows you right here, these are all TV shows that he was in, essentially, and just how much he meant to people. Finding Forrester he was in. We talked about that during the Sean Connery, so maybe they did meet each other. I don't know.
Well, moving on, not moving on, but also contributing, the iconic Jeopardy countdown or timer.
Yep. Do 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 do.
Mr. Trebek,
do 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 do.
Yes. Do.
Yes, it was
iconic things. Like I remember from my childhood, when you're homesick from school, you start out your day watching Price is Right, and then in the afternoon, Jeopardy's coming on. Not as popular because you actually have to think and be smart to really get.
You do, yes. Yeah, Jeopardy was that show that. It was fun to watch, but it did kind of make you feel stupid sometimes, and that's why I was like,
right. It raises your self-esteem. Like, yeah, I knew that.
That or like Wheel of Fortune too. Like I liked Wheel of Fortune a little more because I could guess those puzzles a little easier than like who the general in 1545 was. But it was still fun to watch Alex Trebek on TV. He was very sarcastic and very witty at times. He had a lot of fun with his guests. Always very good back and forth. Just the fact that you could do a show like that for 30 plus years and remain relevant is impressive. And I think everybody felt it when he announced he was sick like a year or so ago.
March of this year.
Was it March? Oh, God. COVID makes everything feel like it was 9 years ago. So earlier this year when he announced he was sick, it was kind of the writing on the wall that he wasn't going to be around much longer. However, it seemed like he was doing better and he was still going, but as we know, obviously that wasn't the case. He lost his battle, very sadly. And it's when you have someone who everybody knows, it's a big loss to everybody. It's not just a movie actor. It's not just a singer. It's somebody that we all recognize, whether we know him mostly through SNL or through watching the show or our parents watching the show. He really ingrained himself in society, I think.
The last celebrity that I was really moved by their death, I don't know how many people know, but Stuart Scott from SportsCenter.
Yep.
He had a long battle with cancer, a very public battle with it, and he won the
Jimmy V.
The Jimmy V Award for perseverance in the face of cancer. And then about 4 months later, he succumbed to it.
Yeah.
And that's just I don't know. I was just drawing a parallel between the two.
No, for sure.
The
That's
celebrities that had an impact, on me, and just their upfront and openness with their battle and how they fought and how they lived their lives until the end. Is very much. I'm forgetting words again. Shocking.
That's okay. I would draw
It's just inspiring.
Inspiring, yeah. I would draw the parallel too between Patrick Swayze and Farrah Fawcett, because they passed away around the same time, and they were both diagnosed with incurable cancers, and it was just kind of over quickly, but at the same time, you got to see how strong they were. Like, Swayze was filming a brand new TV show in that time, and Farrah Fawcett was still doing, like, interviews and stuff. I mean, it was the fact that they were still able to do what they were doing, and they fought ahead. They just went ahead, and they're like, we're going to just keep going until it's over. Is inspiring, and very inspiring. Stuart Scott did the same thing, as did Alex Trebek, and many other people, too.
Farrah Fawcett was overshadowed because she passed away the same day Michael Jackson did. So
yeah,
a lot of people will say that she didn't get the recognition and the tributes that she deserved. For being an icon in the 70s and 80s and even earlier.
Well, and two, I think again, we've touched on this before. When someone like an Alex Trebek passes away, it's different because they've always been there. Like, since you and I have come of age, like, Alex Trebek has always been on TV, and we've never not had him on TV. So it's going to be a bit strange. Even though I don't watch Jeopardy anymore, it's going to be a little strange to not have him on Jeopardy. That's just how it's going to be. So it's just one of those things that maybe you don't expect it to be that big of a cultural impact when you lose a game show host. But for someone who's been around for 30 plus years and doing his job and everybody knows who he is, I think it really kind of definitely hit 2020 on the head, because 2020 has been kind of a shit show. So it's just another loss in 2020. You're like, damn, there goes another good one. So yeah, Alex Trebek, we hope you're resting in peace, and we miss you here on Earth, because you were an inspiration and just a lot of fun to watch every time people turned on their TV and watched Jeopardy. So it was a great time. So moving on to our somewhat new segment, and definitely more light in the way of tone, is Awfully Good or Just Plain Awful. And this week, we decided to do the 2015 version of Fantastic Four. Directed by Josh Trank. Produced by Matthew Vaughn, Simon Kinberg, starring Miles Teller, Michael B. Jordan, Kate Mara, Jamie Bell, Toby Kebbell, the late Reg E. Cathy, and Tim Blake Nelson. Fantastic Four is a comic book movie that came out in 2015. I'm going to give you the stats here in a second. Budget, $120 to $155 million. Box office worldwide, $167.9 million worldwide. 9% Rotten Tomatoes, 3.46 out of 10 is an overall average, 27 Metacritic score, 4.3 out of 10 on IMDb. So there's your stats for it. Not very well received. Fans didn't care for it. That's what the IMDb score is for, because that IMDb, as many people may not know, a lot of that score is from fans.
Yep.
It starts off with two kids, they're in a science class, Reed and a young Ben Grimm, who's the Thing and Mr. Fantastic, if you're not familiar. Reed Richards and Ben Grimm. They forge a friendship, and then years later, Reed gets accepted into college in New York, I think, and because he's found a way into this other dimension, and so Reggie Cathy's character, who is the father of Sue and Johnny Storm, who are Invisible Woman and the Human Torch, brings him onto their team, and they try to develop a way to get into this world. Different than the original movie and the comics, instead of going to a planet, they kind of teleport to a planet that gives them these special powers.
Right. Part of the reason, why this was judged so harshly, it gets away from the things that are like the storyline that has been regurgitated several times. It tried to take a different approach to it, and people freaked out.
It did.
I know you're in the middle of a synopsis and I cut you off, but a lot of people had a problem with the casting and the way this was set up with Sue Storm and Johnny Storm being of different races.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to call it out. It's bullshit. Sue is the adopted sister and adopted daughter of the Storms. What's the problem?
Yes.
But, so many people had a problem with this. It's like, it's aggravating and infuriating, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. But
no, that's
your excuse. It's bullshit.
If that's why you didn't like it, I'll tell you this: there are a lot of other reasons not to like this movie than that. That's the least of them. And like Wade said, you shouldn't not like this movie for that. They explain it in the movie just fine, and it makes sense. And Michael B. Jordan is a phenomenal actor. The fact that they were able to get him, I think, for that role was really good. He was in Josh Trank's other film, Chronicle, so maybe that's why it was a little easier. But overall, this movie, I think it spends a lot of time on the science of it, which is quite boring. The first, 40 minutes or so, maybe 50 minutes, it's really slow. There's not much action going on. And it really doesn't pick up until they go into the other dimension.
You really have to think and pay attention to what's going on, which I found very interesting.
Okay.
This watch through. But if you're going to expect a superhero movie and you got to do all this science stuff thrown at you, it's kind of like, what's going on here? And it takes forever to get started. They don't get their superpowers till the movie's half over.
Exactly.
So, see, I thought that was really cool. I really appreciated how they did that, and just the transformation process and all of that was, I thought, really well done. It just took too long.
It took too long, and I think it would have been better served if that was the main purpose of this movie. If they would have made a body horror type comic book movie out of this, because when they get their powers, it's very horrific what happens, right? Yeah. And it looks so cool. Reed stretched out on the table. The thing is just kind of like a heap of rocks almost at first. Johnny
George's body sitting there burning.
Yeah, Johnny just can't stop being on fire, and Sue just keeps disappearing. It's all really cool looking, but then it's Reed escapes, and then they go a year later, and it kind of loses all that momentum that they had from all that scary stuff they were just showing us. And then by the time we meet everybody again, they're already used to their powers. They know how to use them. And we get
the time jump there.
Yeah.
My thing is, if they would have started, right before they go into the dimension, take 10 minutes to kind of fill everybody in.
Yes.
Don't take a whole hour.
Yes. Agreed. They spent way too much time on the intro of it for family of superheroes who pretty much any comic book fan already knows. I know you're trying to appeal to non-comic book people, but let's be honest. The majority of fans that go see a movie like this are going to already be familiar with Fantastic Four. So like you said, have a little bit of a intro in the beginning of how they met, maybe in flashbacks, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But it didn't really seem to kind of come together. And I think there was studio interference, which is why we kind of get that rushed action sequence at the end, because I don't think that was originally in the movie. And right. I think they were just trying to, the studio was like, well,
sequel?
Yeah, exactly. And the studio was like, well, we need action for people to be excited about. And they did that. I did not like what they did with Dr. Doom.
I was going to ask you about how you felt about that, because I was not
didn't feel it. I'm like, where's his mouth? And why can they hear him speak? I'm confused. I didn't understand. They basically turn him into a robot.
Dr. Doom is one of the most frightening and, sadistic and sinister characters. And it's kind of like...
He's kind of like Ultron. And, it's just like...
Ultron without being funny.
Yeah, right, exactly. Not very witty Ultron. And Toby Kebbell, I think, is a great character actor. He has become the next Andy Serkis. He does a lot of motion capture work. He did Kong in the new Kong movie. He did Koba in the sequel to the Rise of the Planet Apes, Dawn of the Planet Apes. So he's been doing that motion capture work. So I don't know if they thought hey, we have this guy. We should have him do motion capture work because he's good at it. instead of just like having him be in the movie after he's Doctor Doom. Like Toby Kebbell's there before he's Doctor Doom, and then after that it's just his voice. And I didn't really like it. It was kind of, the whole movie itself is kind of a mess. There's some interesting things we talked about that could have been really cool, I think, if they would have just stuck with them. And it turns into, we got to team up to stop the bad guy. And I'm okay with those movies as long as you like build to that. Like, there was no build to that whole point. It was just kind of like, oh shit, well, we got to fight the bad guy now, and we're a team. And then it ends with, hey, we got a great idea for a team name. Cut to black. And I was like, really? Like, that's how we're going to do this? Like, it was just...
If only it would have ended on a freeze frame.
Yes. If it would, you know what? I would have preferred it to end on a freeze frame. It just was so, I don't know. It was kind of all over the place. It seemed like nobody really knew what they wanted out of this movie.
Well, the studio interference really kind of shines through because it's choppy, you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
It seems like, I know that there is an extended cut of the film. I don't know if it helps.
Yeah, I don't know.
I am curious to see it because there are enough parts that pique my interest to see. And then now we're getting into the Batman, Superman, 4-hour.
Do we want the trank cut? Is that what we're looking for?
I mean, I'd give it a shot. Like, I saw the uncut or the director's cut of Batman versus Superman, and I kind of felt the same way about it. So
yeah, it just, you know.
Don't get me started on that one because
that's for another day.
Most iconic superheroes of all time, in my opinion, and you shit all over them.
Yes.
Martha, really? Anyway.
All right, for another day. We'll talk about Batman as a whole in one podcast. Just, yeah, I don't know. For me, this movie just didn't work. It wasn't really fun enough to be awfully good. I don't know that it was awful enough to be just plain awful. It's maybe a little bit above just plain awful, but because there are some, like we said, there are some things they do well, but for the most part, it's kind of all over the place. The performances are pretty good for the most part. The dialogue is very clunky. They don't do a good...
For the cast that they had, it should have been a better movie.
Exactly. And also, the reshoots. Kate Mara had got her hair set for another movie, so her hair changes throughout this entire movie. One time she's wearing her actual hair, and then the next scene they'll cut, and she'll be wearing a wig, and it's very obvious because her hair looks very different. Just like the Henry Cavill mustache situation from
Justice League.
Justice League. So, yeah. So, I mean, we're not really recommending this movie. At least I'm not. You can watch it on Disney Plus. They have it there now. It just... Yeah, it's like it should have, with that, you're right, with that cast, it should have been much better, and they just kind of missed the ball, dropped the ball, missed the mark, whatever you want to say, and which is why it failed and we didn't get a sequel, and now it's back with the MCU, so we'll get a new Fantastic Four probably at some point in the near future, so.
Yep.
All right, so moving on to what we have watched recently. Since the horror stuff and all that is over with, it's October, I've been watching trying to get a few things done here. So this week I watched Unpregnant on HBO Max. It's an HBO Max original movie. I think it was, again, one of those ones that was supposed to be in theaters, but when COVID hit, they just said, forget it, we'll just throw it straight to HBO Max. It stars Haley Lulu Richardson and Barbie Ferreira as two best friends who had a falling out in high school, and one of them gets pregnant. That's Veronica, and she asks Bailey to go with her basically across the country to Albuquerque, New Mexico, where she can get an abortion for being under the age of 17. She doesn't want her parents to know that she's getting this abortion. So what follows is a really good coming-of-age buddy movie between these two girls who kind of find their way back to each other in a way. And it's just really fun. It's really good. It's really, emotional, heartwarming. Giancarlo Esposito from Breaking Bad plays a really great character named Bob, who owns, I believe it's like Murray's Limos. And Murray is his alias. His real name is Bob. And he's just kind of crazy guy who ends up taking them to get like throughout. It's kind of like Due Date, where they're on their way to New Mexico. Things happen. Their car gets taken by the police. Then they got to find another way to get to where they're going, and they keep having to find different ways to get there. It's a lot of fun. I really like this movie. I think people should watch it. I love coming of age stories, and so this is right up my alley. Really good. People should check it out if you have HBO Max. I also watched Retaliation with Orlando Bloom. Is this movie where it's him with a sledgehammer on the cover, and it says "Revenge is Hell," and it's just this movie. You think it's going to be Orlando Bloom killing people with a sledgehammer. That is not the case at all. It's about a man who was assaulted by a priest when he was a child, and it just drama, and it's just thriller, suspense all the way through. Not really any action at all. He does have the sledgehammer at some point, though, so at least the sledgehammer makes it into the movie. Then finally, I watched Black Christmas, the third one in the bunch. It's the second remake. These movies are usually slashers. This one takes it in a weird supernatural way. I really didn't care for it. It starts off okay and has some good moments early. It is PG-13, which my slasher films should be rated R. That's how I prefer them.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm still making my way through Dawson's Creek and Sons of Anarchy, other than reliving some of the 90s action movies that we talked about already. That's all I was really watching this week, so I'll have some new stuff for us next week.
All right. And so moving on, we're going to go to the news. The news of the week is Night Has Fallen. The fourth Fallen movie with Gerard Butler is in the works. Jordan Peele's next horror film is to release in 2022. Mads Mikkelsen in talks to replace Johnny Depp in Fantastic Beasts 3. Arnold Schwarzenegger spy series is headed to Netflix. Michael Bay has cast Jake Gyllenhaal in his next movie called Ambulance. Denai Guerrera from Walking Dead is cast as Shirley Chisholm, who was the first black woman elected to Congress and also ran for president. Sorority House Massacre TV show coming from Norman Reedus and Stephen Trask. Gender-swapped Island of Dr. Moreau series in the works from X-Men First Class. Writer and live-action Lilo and Stitch film gets John M. Chu as the director. Coming up, WandaVision will finally debut on Disney Plus January 15th, 2021. Freaky, starring Vince Vaughn and Catherine Newton, which is out in theaters now, will be on premiere VOD November 30th. And Tenet, which was supposed to be a big budget box office movie this year, it did come out, it did make decent money, will be on Blu-ray December 15th. Pre-order your copy. I did pre-order mine, and I cannot wait to see it. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for listening. We appreciate it, and we're glad that you like to hear our voices every week.